When I first got started 3D printing, I remember the entry-level 3D printer was $2,500, made out of laser cut plywood, and its 3D prints that it could produce were limited and okay at best. Times have changed because now you can get some excellent 3D printers for less than $500, and they're made of mass-produced quality components with print quality that would blow those old prints out of the water. There's a lot of variance between 3D printers in the sub $500 price range, so let's take a look at what makes each one tick and where it might best serve you. Let's jump in. The printer that started it all. The Creality CR10S exploded the popularity of Creality and 3D printers alike. It was affordable, it was sturdy, and it was huge. Years on, and this is still a 3D printer that can hold its own with a 300 by 300 by 400 millimeter build volume. And yes, that's for less than $500. The all-aluminum frame comes mostly assembled out of the box with several screws and support brackets tying together the two main pieces that come in the box. The S in the name signifies some improvements over the original CR10 as well. A filament runout sensor to detect when your massive print jobs are about to run out of material and pauses it. Dual Z-axis lead screws support the X-axis gantry from both sides, ensuring that there isn't any lean or drag in the Z-motion system. And a print recovery function that will attempt to pick up where you left off if a power failure interrupts your 3D print. It wasn't long ago that resin 3D printing was an expensive process reserved for enterprise-level 3D printer users. Anycubic really changed the face of resin 3D printing with the introduction of the Anycubic Photon several years ago. It was small, affordable, and just as capable as the big players in the game. One of their latest 3D printers, the Anycubic Photon Mono 2K, improves on the Photon platform with a monochromatic LCD, a divergence from the standard RGB LCDs of previous models. The LCD is what allows the UV light to pass through into the resin vat and cure it into the shape of each layer. And by using a monochromatic screen, layer cure times are often 10 times quicker than RGB. They allow even more light to pass through for faster curing. Pair the Anycubic Photon Mono with epoxy-free MH Series resin and you can have this small companion fit right on your desk without worrying about any resin odors. At this point, the Ender 3 is a classic. For less than $200, you can have a 3D printer with an all-metal aluminum extrusion frame, injection molded components, and not a single 3D printed structural part in sight. Out of the box, an Ender 3 will perform decently well, but it doesn't have any sort of features to wow you. Instead, its glory comes from being such a low-cost printer that means you can upgrade and modify it for the features you desire most, rather than pay for them and not use them. Need to print higher temperature materials? Then ditch the PTFE lined hot end and try out a Micro Swiss all metal hot end. Want to be able to easily remove your 3D prints and leave sharp spatulas behind? Slap on a Buildtech FlexPlate system so you can pop prints off as soon as they are finished and get right back to printing. Really, the possibilities are endless, especially since its low cost means there's a huge community of Ender 3 modders creating their own designs to incorporate any combination of parts to fit the Ender 3. If you know you already want an all metal hot end and a flexible build sheet, check out the Ender 3 Maker bundle that comes with these upgrades packed together and ready for you to install. For those that want an Ender 3 like 3D printer but don't want to spend the time assembling a pile of parts, the Creality CR20 is essentially a flat-packed Ender 3. Rather than several components that need to be bolted together, the CR20 is essentially just two separate parts out of the box, the base and the gantry. With only a handful of bolts, you can have this printer assembled and ready to go. From there, its design is very similar to the Ender 3, so many of the mods and upgrades will be just as compatible with this model, perfect for growing with your skills and needs. In terms of what you can print, the Anycubic Photon Mono 2K and Photon Mono SE are essentially identical. They have the same build volume, monochrome LCD screen, and sturdy metal frame. However, several quality of life features will give you more control of your resin 3D printing process. The top hinges away from the printer on the Mono SE, so you don't have to worry about finding a spot to put the lid while you're working on the build plate or adding resin. This is the only Photon Mono that features any sort of filtration by using two small interior fans to push air through a filter and remove any sort of stinky odor that's common with 3D printing resin, unless of course you're using epoxy-free MH Build resin. For a workspace where you expect to use some of the more odorous resins, the Anycubic Photon Mono SE will be the better resin 3D printer choice you could make. This is one of only a few 3D printers on our list that uses what is called a cantilever style bed. Rather than moving the bed along the y-axis, instead it is gradually lowered on the z-axis. By using this method, your 3D prints are a lot more stable than flinging the bed back and forth, so tall 3D prints are much less likely to tip over as the print progresses. Besides that, the Ender 5 Pro has a lot of beneficial features. An all-metal extruder is much more durable than the standard plastic extruders of other Creality machines, a premium Capricorn XS Bowden tube to more tightly constrain filament, and a magnetic and flexible bed plate to quickly remove your finished prints and start the next. Big Tree Tech has been known for their components, from motherboards to extruders to touchscreens, so it's no surprise they have the know-how to create their own 3D printer. The BQB1 takes a lot of design cues from other aluminum extrusion 3D printers, but flips it on its head by improving on the functionality using their own hardware. The screen at the front isn't just full color, it's a touchscreen. And if you so choose, you can turn it back to the interface you might be used to by holding down the knob. Dual radial fans and a unique clear duct better direct air towards your hot 3D print and illuminates it with the built-in LED. Even the motherboard improves the design with nearly silent stepper drivers, so the loudest thing on this printer really is just the fans. To top it all off, the stock build plate is a flexible and textured super steel sheet that makes 3D prints basically fall off the bed once it's cooled, but maintains a rock steady grip throughout the print. The big Tree TechbqB1 has a lot of bells and whistles that will really make this a 3D printer to reckon with. While very similar to the Ender 3 and Ender 3 Maker bundle, the differences can be subtle if you don't know what to look for. The aluminum extrusion that guides the Y-axis carriage has been beefed up to a 40 by 40 mm extrusion rather than the slimmer 20 by 40 mm extrusion of the Ender 3. This has been done in an aim to keep the build plate at a consistent level and not need to be re-leveled as often. Meanwhile is known for making reliable electronics and power supplies in particular, which is why the Ender 3 Pro uses a genuine Meanwhile power supply, which should improve the robustness of this 3D printer's electronics for a long time. Just like the Creality CR20, the CR20 Pro comes flat packed, so just a couple screws and you're up and running. The big difference is this model already has some worthwhile upgrades like a flexible build plate, bed leveling sensor, and a Bowden tube that more tightly constrains the filament path. The addition of a removable magnetic build plate means that you can flex it and peel your finished 3D prints off the bed rather than use a sharp scraper and risk damaging your machine or yourself. The genuine BL Touch bed leveling sensor takes the guesswork out of calibrating the level of your bed and more precisely control how close your first layer is, and it's material agnostic. That means you can upgrade your build plate, change it out, or try the layer lock powder coated beds, and the BL Touch will have no problem detecting the bed surface and creating a reliable map of your CR20's bed. Capricorn XS tubing replaces the generic Bowden tube and brings the internal diameter to a tiny 1.9 millimeters, so that extrusions and retractions are more directly reflected and backlash is minimized. Overall, this is a great machine out of the box for newcomers to find their footing with 3D printing. The Frozen Sonic Mini 4K is a special model within this small desktop resin 3D printer niche. Where most others use a 2K LCD screen, which directly translates to the resolution of your 3D prints, this 3D printer has a full 4K LCD, and it's monochrome. Essentially, this 3D printer has twice the number of pixels as a 2K LCD 3D printer, so it can capture just that much more detail of your 3D models. You can print fast and super fine with the Sonic Mini 4K right on your desk. The Monoprice Maker Ultimate 2 is a fully enclosed 3D printer and has the capabilities to bring its bed to 100 degrees Celsius, which makes it a perfect fit for printing with ABS. With a glass bed and an automatic bed leveling sensor, you can print with a wide variety of materials with confidence that, with the right adhesive solution, anything will stick to the glass. It's the perfect baseline for any 3D printer bed. A filament runout sensor will detect if you're out of filament before the job is done, pause the job, and wait off to the side until you can change out the material and resume. Among all the printers on the list, this is the only one that comes enclosed, so if you know you need to do a lot of ABS 3D printing, this is the one for you. Many changes have been made to the Ender 3 in years past, culminating in the Ender 3 V2. Features that would normally be 3D printed upgrades designed by the 3D printing community members are now injection molded parts included from the very start. A knob on the extruder makes jogging material easy, and knobs on the X and Y axis idler means you can fine-tune belt tension for the smoothest ride. The base of the printer has had a bit of a redesign with the power supply being moved underneath the Y-axis carriage and a handy parts drawer integrated into the frame to keep all your tools close by. Though the biggest thing you'll notice off the bat is the full color screen to make navigation through the different options and settings easy and intuitive. And of course, by making this into a bundle, you get even more features out of the Ender 3 V2, like an all-metal hot end for high-temperature 3D printing, and a flexible build-tack flexplate system so you can quickly go from one job to the next. There are many 3D printers in the under $500 price range, which can make it difficult to sift through them and find the right model for yourself. Hopefully, you have a much better understanding of the differences between each 3D printer and have the information that you need to choose the right one for you. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe to the MatterHackers YouTube channel and find us at MatterHackers on all your favorite social media platforms. To learn more and to order your own inexpensive 3D printer today, go to MatterHackers.com.